Welcome, and thank you all for joining this press conference to mark the public launch of the Mining Standards Accountability Alliance, or MSAA. My name is Benjamin Hitchcock Aushelo, and I'm the International Mining Standards and Policy Advocate at Earthworks, a nonprofit organization that works to protect communities and ecosystems from the adverse impacts of oil, gas, and mining while promoting sustainable solutions. Earthworks is a founding member of the MSAA. As a reminder, we have English Indonesian interpretation available for today's webinar, so please make sure to select the interpretation channel that you may need. Chelsea Hodgkins will make an introduction on behalf of the MSAA, followed by three panelists, Fabian Anandita, Rachel Palma Randall, and Piers Ginting, in representation of their respective organizations, who will speak to the experiences of those most directly impacted by the harms of the mining industry. Following their remarks, we'll have time allotted for Q&A. Please type any questions for the panelists into the Q&A function of this webinar, which can be found under More at the bottom right hand of your screen. And now for Chelsea Hodgkins. Chelsea Hodgkins, she, her, is the Senior EV Advocate with Public Citizens Climate Program. She advocates for the US government and car companies to uptake strong zero emissions vehicle regulations and improve their environmental, labor, and human rights practices in supply chains. Prior to joining Public Citizen, Chelsea worked on international and domestic climate policy. Chelsea, take it away.
Thanks, Benjamin. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I'm grateful to be here alongside the organizers, lawyers, and researchers that you'll soon hear from, who are actively working with frontline communities to defend their rights against mining companies and toxic projects. Their stories and their work will illuminate the harms that could spread at mine sites around the world under an industry-created voluntary global mining standard and platform to certified minerals as so-called responsible, known as the Consolidated Mining Standard Initiative. For more than 2 years, Public Citizen and various international organizations have worked hard to improve this standard and to influence the associations and companies behind it. Today, we're launching the Mining Standards Accountability Alliance, or MSAA, in a campaign because despite our efforts, the initiative has not meaningfully integrated public input. And so now the weak standard risks greenwashing site-level harms to communities and indigenous peoples while misleading consumers, investors, mineral purchasers, and regulators. The MSAA is a global network of civil society organizations, indigenous-led groups, and human rights experts. We envision a world where indigenous peoples' rights, sovereignty, and governance are respected in law and practice, where communities and workers affected by mining exercise real power over the decisions that affect their health, their environment, and their safety, and where the mining industry is held accountable to the highest standards that protect people and planet while remedying harms. We believe that the common good is more important than corporate power and profit. Mining companies have a long record of harming communities and the environment. Already, minerals and metals mining and processing account for 80% of biodiversity loss and almost a quarter of global pollution. Since 2012, more people have been killed opposing mining than any other industry. And this has a particular impact on indigenous peoples and communities in the so-called global south. And yet, governments in major markets are weakening laws and regulations to rush through projects and increase mineral supply without proper safeguards. The industry associations behind the consolidated standard represent some of the world's largest, most powerful mining companies that have legacies of harming communities and the environment, and they're taking advantage of this mineral boom to consolidate their power and drive a race to the bottom through this proposed voluntary standard and certification platform. Corporate self-regulation does not work, and the mining industry is no exception. That's why we need stronger laws, and it's also why it's important for any voluntary standards to uphold international human rights practices and industry best practices to share power and decision-making with directly impacted rights holders. Greenwashing, as a consolidated mining standard threatens to do, has real-world impacts that are negative on frontline communities and indigenous peoples around the world. You'll hear stories of communities across Indonesia and South Africa today that are impacted by mining operations of companies who are both advising the Consolidated Mining Standard and who are members of the industry associations leading its development. These companies are Freeport-McMoRan, Anglo American, and Newmont Corporation. Thank you again for being here, and I look forward to hearing from the panelists. Back to you, Benjamin.
Thanks, Chelsea. So our first panelist joining us is Febrian Anandita. Febrian is a public interest lawyer and chairman of AMAN, the Indigenous Peoples Alliance, Sumbawa chapter, West Nusa Tenggara, Indonesia. He leads the legal defense for the Czech indigenous community in their territorial dispute against PT Aman Mineral Nusa Tenggara, or PTAMNT. He specializes in agrarian law and corporate accountability, recently compelling the Copper Mark to acknowledge misleading sustainability claims made by the company. I'd like to especially thank Febrian and Pias for joining us today, as it's very late at night for them. Febrian, please go ahead.
Good morning to our colleagues in the US and good evening to everyone joining from Indonesia. My name is Febrian Anita. I'm public interest lawyer and chairman of the Indigenous People Alliance of Archipelagos for the Sumbawa region, West Nusa Tenggara, Indonesia. I'm here to represent the voice of the Cek-Bocek/Suri indigenous community. I'm here to expose the hard truth that you will not find in any glossy sustainability report. A mining corporation cannot be called responsible if its foundation is built on the denial of indigenous rights. While Aman Mineral, PT Aman Mineral Nusa Tenggara, we call it AMINT, received global award and certification like the Copper Mark. The reality on the ground is a bitter, unresolved conflict. The Czech people in this community, not theoretical concept. We are living community based in Lawin village, Ropang district, Sumbawa, deep in the southern mountain of Sumbawa. Lives are intertwined with the Dodo Rimpi forest. To the global market, this forest is just a copper deposit, known as the Lang Block. But to us, this is our Mother Earth. It is where our ancestors are buried, where our water source originate, and where our identity lives. But today, our home is under siege. Our ancestral domain is being enclosed, and our access to sacred site is restricted by company security forces. The industry often claims that the expansion into our land, the Alang Block, is just a future plan or a concept, but that should be judged. This is a lie. We have obtained financial data showing that PT AMNT has allocated approximately 3.3 million US dollar, especially for exploration activity in the Alam project. This is money is not for paperwork. This capital is funding active core drilling in our forest, geological mapping on our customary land, heavy machinery entering our territory. Of this happening without our free prior informed consent, this 3.3 million US dollar is not investment in development. It is active investment in disposition. This is where the certification system fail us. The current system allows companies to carry peak certifying their production site Batu Hijau as clean while ignoring the human rights violation happening right next door in their expansion site and Alang block. But here is the smoking gun. We discovered that PT MNT was using the Copper Mark logo in their annual report to market the entire integrated operation, including the conflict alongside to global investor. We challenge this formally, and I can confirm to you today. The copper mark has officially admitted to us in writing that the company's claim were indeed misleading and violated the claims guide. I ask of you, if company is willing to mislead the public about a logo to attract investors, how can we trust their claim about respecting human rights in a remote forest? We refuse to be victim of greenwashing. Therefore, we demand three things. One, ineligibility. The alarm project must be declared ineligible for any future certification until the land conflict is resolved and indigenous rights are recognized. Second, stop drilling. PT MNT must immediately halt all exploration activity funded by that 3.3 million US dollar budget. Message to buyer like Glencore and for investor, look beyond the logo. Do not let your clean energy transition be built on the stolen land of the Czech people. Thank you.
Fabian, thank you so much for those remarks. And I encourage anyone that has questions for Fabian to put them in the Q&A so they can be answered later on. And congratulations, Fabian, for that amazing advocacy work. Next up is Rachel. Rachel Palma Randall started as director at Action for Southern Africa, AXA, in December of 2025. Previously, she worked in British politics for 20 years. As both a campaigner and an elected official, she has run winning campaigns at all levels. Rachel has been a community campaigner working across UK devolved nations and in Brussels, championing devolution and community activism. Rachel, please take it away.
Hi, thank you for the introduction. As Benjamin said, I'm Rachel Palmer Randall, the very new director at Action for Southern Africa, and we work in partnership with organisations across Southern Africa, like Environment Africa and the London Mining Network, to collaborate with grassroots activists who are tackling huge issues in their regions, in their countries. And I want to talk to you a little bit about the people of Kabwe. Kabwe in Zambia is the most polluted town on earth, and yet you've probably never heard of it. 95% of children in Kabwe have lead poisoning levels, blood lead levels above 5 milligrams per deciliter of blood. And if you're not medical, like I'm not, that's just to tell you that's a lot. That's an awful lot. It's 10 times what the World Health Organization suggests is, quotes, safe. It's poisoning on a scale far greater than Flint, Michigan, which I suspect you probably have heard of, and the plight of the people there. 6.5 million tonnes of lead waste piles were left in Kabwe when the mine was closed, and it has had a catastrophic impact on the environment, on the well-being of people, and the ability of men and women to raise their families in a safe environment. Late last year, AXA, in collaboration with partners, released a report entitled Living in the World's Most Polluted Town, and in that Dr. Stefan Bowes-O'Reilly explains the medical ramifications of these lead poisonings on people living in the village, but specifically upon children. And I'll quote directly from it if I can. The health effects of lead exposure are wide-ranging and deeply concerning. Lead is a potent neurotoxin and disrupts the development of the brain and the nervous system. Effects reduce intelligence, delay language and learning, and increased risk of attention disorders and behavioural difficulties. These problems persist into adulthood, diminishing opportunities for education and employment. And the physical effects are also evident in abdominal pain, vomiting, muscle weakness, growth problems such as stunting and anemia as well are all associated with lead poisoning. And the very high blood lead levels can cause seizures, loss of consciousness, and even death. Crucially, there is no safe threshold for lead exposure. Even the lowest measurable exposures can harm a child's development. So we work really closely with partners on the ground in Kabwe, but particularly we're focusing on the mothers of those children in the region. And they've shared their stories with us, stories which Lord Oates shared in a House of Lords debate last week, questioning the social and corporate responsibility of these mining companies. Loveness is a mother of two, and she says her daughter is often sick. She misses school and is very forgetful. Mary, on the other hand, has given up trying to grow food. She says it feels like a waste of precious seed because each time they don't grow well or not at all because of the lead in the soil. I wish I had a small garden where we would be able to grow fresh veg and fruit. Having to buy vegetables every day is very expensive and we cannot afford it, so my family goes without. She also says, you can't stop children playing in the mud. But obviously, as we know from lead poisoning, it is the soil that is influencing them and polluting them and poisoning them. The situation in Kabwe is a legacy of mining in the region undertaken by Anglo-American for 50 years, specifically the period between 1925 and 1974, when most of the lead was dumped. It's the legacy of colonial rule. It's the legacy of plundering a region for precious materials without protecting miners and their families. And it's a legacy of an industry which talks of social and corporate responsibility, but does little to live its values. Working with grassroots activists, the families, and of course lawyers, we are supporting a historic 140,000 person class action in South Africa to get justice for those miners and their families. We hope to get a decision from the Supreme Court in South Africa next month, and we're hoping that allows us to move that case forward and get justice for those people. But this isn't the story just of one town of Kabwe and the terrible plight of the people who are living with this legacy. There are 6,000 abandoned mines across South Africa, and Kabwe is just one of them. It's not a historic story in Kabwe. Yes, the pollution goes back to 1925, which is almost 100 years ago, but this is a real life, living, ongoing threat to people's lives, well-being and livelihoods. It's a horrific recurring pattern across South Africa and across the world of companies exploiting labour, depleting precious minerals and extracting billions in profit, but failing their corporate and social responsibility. If companies like Anglo were serious about corporate and social responsibility, they wouldn't spend years battling ordinary people in court to get the reimbursement they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rachel. Next up is Piers. Piers Ginting is the coordinator of AER, Aksi Ekologi dan Emansipasi Rakyat. In Indonesia, he holds a Bachelor of Law and has worked as an environmental activist since 2006, supporting community-based environmental justice and corporate accountability efforts in extractive industry hotspots. Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you, Benjamin. I will tell about my finding on the ground in the Freeport-McMoRan in Papua, Indonesia, and also the stories are from activists local that have problem to voice their concern because in the remote area and also with the security issues. Thank you for artwork for convening this event. I'm here to bring my insights and community level realities into this discussion because standards that ignore live impact become marketing, not accountability. Grassberg mining in Papua has operated for decades, more than 50 years, in the indigenous territories of Amume, Kamon, Sempan peoples in Papua, with tiling discharged through Atsua or Wanogong River system to the coast area. The case documentation described thousands of people across district and three villages living with disrupted food sources, livelihood, as land, sea are contaminated. This is also cultural harm. For Komoro and Sempan community, they have 3S philosophy: sungai, sampan, sagu, meaning river, canoe, and sagu. River, canoe, and sagu. This is central to their life, and this central of culture have been displaced by mud of tiling. The impact fall especially hard on women. Women daily burden to get water for the family, including coastal clean water crisis that forces women to travel by traditional small boat 20 kilometer to find water. Because of tiling, river mouths narrow, small island and coastal area degrade, and people can only enter or leave their village by waiting for tides, sometimes 5 or 6 days, so that can pass through the waste impacted swallowing river mouths. Sometimes boats must be pushed as far as 30 kilometers. Economic life disrupted because produce from garden and forest cannot reach the town. And those who cannot delay travel and force to cross open sea facing the heavy waves of Arafura Sea. This is exactly where weak mining standard fail. Freeport McMoran get a copper mark in 2023. Intimidation and criminalization of community defender also occur, including arrest and disruption women discussion. A mine cannot be called responsible if people are punished for telling the truth. So let me close with demand. Reduce production of copper to align with ecological carrying capacity of the watershed and coastal ecosystem based on the independent assessment and community participation. 100% renewable energy because copper nowadays for electric vehicle, but this mining using coal power plant. Provide clean water access, recovery of fisheries and subsistence areas, and measurable reduction in pollution and sediment impacts. Stop intimidation and criminalization of environment defenders, real remedy, and not limited or divide the community direct versus indirect impacted exclusion. So all community must be fully recognized with transparent community overseen mechanism. Standard must not become a green shield for ongoing harm. If buyers and investors want responsible minerals, they must listen to communities, demand this condition before any responsible copper claim is accepted. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Piers. So you've just heard from three testimonies from advocates who work directly with impacted communities, communities impacted by three multinational mining companies, all of whom are members of the ICMM being one of the conveners of the Consolidated Mining Standard Initiative. Two of the three facilities you just heard of have undergone Copper Mark audits. Copper Mark, of course, also being one of the conveners of the CMSI and the legal entity which will host the CMSI and that will transform into the CMSI. So after hearing those testimonies, I'd like to thank you all again for joining us. Before we attend to any Q&A that might have come up, I want to also give a special thank you to Johnny, our interpreter. Johnny Barlianta is an Indonesian translator and interpreter based in Cambodia, who has extensive experience supporting both local and international organizations across sectors, including seismic survey, petrochemical operations, legal and elections work, and environmental issues.